It's Zach Edey with Purdue men's basketball, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
Welcome back to Boilers in the Stands. I am your host, Greg Braggs Jr. Alongside me, as always, is my guy, Joe Jackson. Kraig Bowers is working on the underneath of Mackey Arena, talking to the players, and Matt Painter coming up here in press conferences, and we hope to see if he can join us after those are concluded. Boilers hit 100 points, Joe. They covered as well. I'm not a big gambling guy, but I'm pretty sure the line was set at like 30. Could they eclipse 30? And it seemed like early on Purdue was playing with their food a little bit with the Jacksonville Dolphins. But then they just kind of kicked it into high gear to end the first half. And in the second half, we're able to, just pull away completely as the number one team in the country that they are, playing a team like Jacksonville. That should be expected. So definitely happy to see how that went, because initially it was about 29-15. And then all of a sudden, Jacksonville went on a 7-0 run, and it's 29-22. And you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't look right. Like we should be up more. But at that point, Zach Edey only had like 2 points, and definitely felt like they were trying different things out. I'm definitely curious to hear your thoughts on obviously in the second half, you're getting to see some different lineups that don't have Zach Edey in there. So I'm definitely curious to hear your thoughts when it comes to just the pace of the game and the way Purdue approached this, maybe trying to tinker with some things that they wouldn't necessarily be able to do once Big Ten play gets started here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I think you definitely saw it. I mean, Painter went to the full bench lineup in the second half with like 11 minutes left. I can pull up the rotation here real quick, and I'm 99% sure it's accurate this time. I know last game I did mess up 4 of the minutes I flip-flop Jones and Lawyer. Yeah, you can see right away, like in that first half, Colvin gets a larger run. And then in the second half, like Jones comes back in for 2 minutes, TKR comes back in for 3, but like basically the starters played that first 4 minutes, and then they had a couple other minutes elsewhere, and that was it. And then it's a lot of, Ethan Morton played a lot of point guard in the second half. Colvin gets, a 12 minute run. Heidi gets a 10-minute run.
Yep.
Definitely just trying different stuff out. In that first half, the non-Edey, non-Smith actually was +1, I believe, if my calculations are right, which is, good to see, even if it is against Jacksonville. But yeah, I think they were for sure trying different stuff, and just in general, like it just felt like that first half, especially, like Braden was just kind of going through the motion. Like most of the guys, not that they're not trying to win, but it felt like they just came off a win against Arizona, and now they're playing Jacksonville. If that makes sense, like they're just going through it, doing what they had to do to win.
Well, but that's the thing though. Like when it was 29-22, I'm like, I'm an emotional overreactionary fan. It's just the way I watch sports. And I'm sitting there like, this is so Purdue. Like they can stand with the big boys and beat the crap out of Arizona. And then they're playing with their food with Jacksonville. And at the end of the day, I need killer mentality at all times. I want these guys to be trained assassins everywhere they walk. I don't care if they're even in a basketball game. Like if they're walking to class, I want them to just bowl people over at all times. Like when they're ordering their food, like just do it in the most maniacal way. And like, to me, it's like, because we all understand, again, the teams they lost to, like, come on. And it's tongue in cheek. I get it. But like, just beat the crap out of these guys. And they did that eventually. And that's typically what you see in games like this from a lot of top teams. They, it stays close for a little bit, but like IU, I mean, they're playing like Alabama State or something right now. And how many times, if you've watched IU games this year, they should have lost to Morehead State. And so obviously Purdue's way light years ahead of what IU is as a program. But at the same time, you don't want to mess around with teams, and that's not what Purdue should be doing. So at the end of the day, they took care of business and they won handedly. I mean, it's almost laughable to talk about the start of the game, but
I'm clipping that and putting it on IU Twitter, by the way.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Let's keep.
We're leaving no context.
Well, and that's the thing. Like that, we'll get back to talking about this game, but it is the truth when it comes like Northwestern beats Purdue and then turns around and loses to Chicago State. IU could lose to Morehead State or frickin' Army, but when they play Purdue, they'll look like a national championship favorite. Like that.
Yeah.
Purdue has that effect on teams because they're the hunted. They're big dog. Everybody wants to slay the dragon when they play Purdue. So, I've said for a long time, a lot of teams in the Big Ten, specifically IU and now Northwestern, if they played every team like they play Purdue, the Big Ten would have every team in the Big Ten would be vying for the Final Four.
Yeah, and I think it is like legit. Obviously, there was a little bit of stretch today that it was a little close, but nobody was ever really worried like that. Then the first 4 minutes, Purdue just does what they do, get out to like a 12-0 run, extend the game. But Nebraska was down to South Dakota yesterday in the second half. Iowa was close with UMBC for a while. We already mentioned IU. Like you can kind of go up. You can go up and down pretty much everybody in the Big Ten, and like every single team at some point has had somewhat of a scare, like where it's like tied at half or something like that.
Right.
And so, yes, it is Jacksonville. Obviously, Purdue should do what they did today, but at the same time, they did it. Like, they did what they're supposed to do, and there is at least a little bit of something in that, I think.
What would you say when it got down to 29-22, and then all of a sudden Purdue went on this jolt before the end of the first half? Did you notice anything specifically that changed, or who you felt kind of led the charge to get them going again?
Honestly, they went back to the starters, and that helped a ton. It's
amazing how that works.
Yeah. Like, and Painter was like, you could see he was trying to just mess with stuff, see what was going on, but he goes to the starters, Gillis instead of TKR, though TKR had a good game. We'll talk about him. And then, they kind of extend the run. And then the first 4 minutes, Purdue won by 10 of the second half. It was just that 8-minute stretch of the last 4 of the first half and the first 4 of the second half. They won by 15. And then the bench comes in the second half, does well. And now it's, just off to the races, and Purdue kind of gets what they want. But I do think they came out with more energy in the second half. I do think even though they were up 15 at half or whatever it was, I bet Painter got into them a bit because it was pretty sloppy. It was pretty lackadaisical at times.
Well, and here also JB's here in the chat saying, he doesn't think Jacksonville is that bad, and he says he follows it up with saying they have a winning record, and then he says they beat Fairleigh Dickinson, and that's my point. Is like we laugh at these kind of games, but it ain't so funny when we get to March and play a team that we think we have no business, that has no business being in the same arena as us, and all of a sudden we're in a dogfight. And that's my point. Like, I'm just hyper obsessed with this team just slaying the dragon this year. So I want to see killer mentality at all times. What we saw them against Arizona was a killer mentality. And I just want that mentality every single game. I want them to take all that anger and frustration from what happened, last year and years past, and just take it out on every single human being alive, man, woman, or child. Just start just rioting in the streets at people. That's what I want.
I mean, yeah, that's where it's just this team doesn't make sense. It, like, what Jacksonville, their defensive strategy today was the same exact one that FDU did. Because FDU was not a big team. They were good. They were a decent offensive team. They were an atrocious defensive team. Like, FDU was like the worst defensive team last year. And they just employ the 3 on Edey at all times. And this time, I know this percentage kind of tanked towards the end, whatever, but Purdue shot the ball well to start the game. You had Jones getting downhill. You were beating the press and getting easy buckets off of that. You were forcing turnovers and getting out and running. Like, there's like 5 or 6 different elements to this game that Purdue just didn't do last year. Obviously they got to do it in March. That's what anytime you talk about or tweet about Purdue's good on Twitter or Zach Edey's good, all that gets brought up is March. They got to do that, but at the same right now, all they can do is play who's in front of them, and they win this game by 43. Also, just want to quickly.
Well, before you do,
no.
Go ahead.
Just a quick. I don't know if this is. There it is. You guys see that? Like Edie is signing. This is every game. Edie is signing everything. Like there is a huge crowd still there. We are 20, 30 minutes after the game, and Edie is. You guys can't really see him because the lighting and all that, but Edie is right there. He will sign literally everything that they ask him to.
Little inside look here at Mackey Arena. That's what we do for you guys here tuning into Boilers in the Stands. Make sure you hit that like button if you haven't already. Please subscribe to the channel. We appreciate you guys tuning in. But yeah, it's Christmas is in a few days, so it looks like Zach Edey's giving some people some great holiday moments here
for sure
as we get closer to Christmas and Hanukkah or whatever holiday you observe. So the other I thought thing that was interesting here in our first segment that I didn't realize is you said in the last game that you switched something. I wasn't aware that you're the one that makes these graphics.
Yeah, I do them by hand during the game.
Really?
Yep. So last game,
I am stunned. I thought you were pulling these graphics from like a website. You're doing these?
Yeah, that's all by hand. Good old Excel.
What in the hell? Joe, you're just so like talented and organized. And thanks. I was taking this for granted. I thought you were getting this from a website. You're doing this.
I am doing this. So yeah, if you ever see it on Twitter or anything, that's from me. It's handmade.
This is impressive work, people. This just changes everything. This isn't just like a screenshot. He's putting in hard work while the game's going on, ladies and gentlemen. We have to acknowledge this greatness here.
The one little addition I made, if you see that number. So at the bottom, kind of above the colors at the bottom, there's Purdue margin. And so what that number represents, it corresponds with whatever lineups on the floor. And so like that very first lineup was +8 in those first 5 minutes. And then the second one lineup was +5 in their minutes and so on and so forth. For anybody that's watching on video and wants to know what that number's for.
Yeah, it's definitely good. And, Blake Widmer here in the chat, he's saying, is Braggs drunk? I mean, he's losing it over Joe making a little graph. Slow down, Blake. This isn't a little graph here. This is hard work for all of us here tuned in, including myself, that's, helping us get a better understanding of this team. So I don't take any little contribution, big or small, for granted. And this is the kind of hard work that Joe's putting in while he's covering this team for all of you fine people that are tuned in. And we appreciate those efforts. And I will always make sure we acknowledge the hard work that's being put in. No, we're kidding. Blake says, sorry, that sounded wrong. I wasn't knocking Joe. My bad.
You're good.
No, we love you, Blake. Just having some fun here. So let's move on here to the stats of the game as we always do. And, we'll see if we can stay on long enough for Kraig to come on and give his 2 cents. If not, obviously we all understand this isn't, some of the bigger games that are going to be coming up. So it may not go the usual hour and a half like we normally do here for Boilers in the Stands post-game shows. But let's take a look at the team stats for the game. Purdue shoots 51% from the field on 35 of 68 shooting. Jacksonville goes 38% from the field on 22 of 58% shooting. 3-point percentage, Purdue goes 9 of 29 from the 3-point line, only 31%. And Jacksonville goes 4 of 22, even worse, at 18%. 81% from the free throw line for Purdue. They get 26 free throws up, 21 made. 9 of 13 from the stripe for Jacksonville, 69% from the free throw line for them. 22 turnovers for Jacksonville, only 9 for Purdue. 21 points off of those turnovers for Purdue on those 22 forced turnovers, and only 12 points off the points off turnovers for Jacksonville on their end of things. Then we got total rebounds on the day, 39 total rebounds for Purdue, 28 defensively, 11 offensively, 31 total rebounds for Jacksonville, 22 defensively, 9 offensively. Second chance points, about even, 15 for Purdue, 13 for Jacksonville. 43 bench points for Purdue, a big night for the bench to get some minutes in there, some healthy minutes, which we'll go over for some different guys that don't get to get a lot of action. 13 bench points coming from, unless I'm no, 16 bench points. I apologize, for Jacksonville. 50 points in the paint. No surprise there for Purdue. 34 points in the paint from Jacksonville. 13 fast break points off those 22 turnovers. Somewhat of a surprise. You thought maybe that'd be a little more. And then, of course, only 4 fast break points for Jacksonville. So Purdue slowing things down on their end. 6 blocks for Purdue, 2 for Jacksonville. 25 assists for Purdue. That's a big number. 5 assists for Jacksonville. And 39 minutes and 23 seconds of lead time. Jacksonville never led once in this game. So Purdue in dominant fashion, even though I'm complaining that at one point it was 29-22.
I think that's fair to point out. It was all kind of in our thoughts.
Well, that's all there. I mean, aside from
on?
that, what are we talking about here? I could
talk about how Carson Barrett is a hooper. Carson Barrett can play. And I said this last year. I'm saying it again. I legit think he could go play somewhere if he won. I don't know the exact level. I don't know if he'd be a D2 guy or a lower D1, but Carson Barrett can hoop. He in the minutes he gets, he just makes great plays. He's a really, really good passer.
He's got a little flash. He's got some flash to his game. A little behind the back, drops it in for Wilberg for 100. So he had a couple of those minutes here last year. 25 assists on that. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I was gonna get back to. I just had to get the Carson Barrett stuff off.
Well, let me point this out, because I like to yell at the chat. But Adam Guy says, "Are you really reading a report to us?" Yeah, I am, Adam. Because believe it or not, but there's people that will only listen to the audio version, so they don't get to see what you're seeing. So we like to fill everybody in on the stats. But thank you for your podcasting expertise. I'll be sure to tune into whatever show you're doing on your podcast. Go ahead, Joe.
25 assists to 9 turnovers is big for Purdue. That's one that stands out. The other one is where is it? There it is. 22 turnovers for Jacksonville. I don't know the exact. If Cobra Stats is in here, he could definitely figure it out quick. That feels like the most turnovers Purdue has forced in the game in a while, definitely this year and maybe even last year. I think you saw Jones be super aggressive on ball. You saw Smith be very aggressive on ball. And then just the way that the defense was today, I don't think Purdue really respected Jacksonville as a shooting team. And they went 4 for 22 for 3. So there's a reason for that. But you saw them show a lot of help on drives. You saw them dig in a lot and just really be long in the paint, and that forced a lot of turnovers. Now you get that combined with Jones and Smith kind of getting some runouts, and that's also how you end up with 13 dunks for Purdue tonight.
Yep.
And 21 points off turnovers. Only 13 fast break points, which feels low based on these stats, but whatever. That was the big one. It's just this team, Purdue is not a team that forces turnovers, and today they forced turnovers. That could be something that you just kind of keep in your back pocket come March against a team that's, presumably going to be a 15 type 16 seed in the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. So where do you want to start? Because we can start kicking it around the horn as far as the players are concerned. I know you mentioned TKR, and he's stringed together here some good games here in the last 3 or 4 games, I feel like.
Yeah, no, he's really looked good. I mean, 15 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. I think he's really starting to figure out that the way that him and Edey work is TKR just has to hustle every single play. And maybe it isn't fully fair, because I think Gillis and First can kind of both get away with it a little bit of not taking plays off per se, but having some more lackadaisical play at times. I think TKR has to be a workhorse at all times. And you saw that 6 rebounds in 19 minutes a day, 3 of them offensive. I don't know if Kraig is going to be on, so I'm going to take his point, but this is from Kraig. He's kind of saying how he thinks that TKR is almost reading the ball off the rim better. And I think I agree with that. I think he just has a better feel of just, 1, of where he needs to be in the offense, but 2, off the rim of he has a better feel of I need to go get the ball, and he knows kind of where it's going to go. And so now when you have him doing that and you have Edey on the other side, it's going to lead to a lot of rebounds, both offensive and defensive. Obviously he missed a couple bunnies that you're kind of shaking your head at. And again, it's against Jacksonville, but I thought he played well against Arizona. And I know the Bama game, I don't know if we don't really want to get into my plus minus rant today, but he was minus 20. I think he played way better than what the minus 20 showed. Is it perfect? Is it Purdue's best lineup with TKR and Edie in? Probably not, but I think it is much improved than the beginning of the year. You're muted. That's $5.
God, I coughed, and so I muted. And I don't get any money for doing that, and now I unmute.
You were at presser for the Arizona game, but like since me and Kraig were sitting next to each, we were pretty close, and so like I don't think either of us had like the actual volume on, and so I'm going for like a minute. My mic's muted the whole time, and then chat just exploded.
Yeah,
so that isn't as bad as that one, at least.
Yeah, I know it's bullshit because like I said, I muted out of respect because I coughed. I don't get no money for that. I only get money for being an idiot. But that's fair. That's the rule we have here. We'll have a good pizza party by the end of this year after all the money we're gonna save up. But yeah, I talked to TKR about this after the Arizona game in the hallway. I meant to put the video up, but he talked about, just starting to get more comfortable playing, and understanding his space next to Zach and what his job is. And so you definitely can see that here lately. And I'd be the first one to tell him if we can get him here on the show before the season's up that, I was concerned and critical of his play early on because I just didn't know how his fit was going to be. But TKR, just like the rest of this team, and this is the way Matt Painter recruits guys that are, team, oriented and are thinking about the bigger picture than just themselves. And you can see that TKR is bought into what Matt Painter's trying to do here. TKR could have transferred, right? He was a highly touted guy, but he chose to redshirt. He's been playing behind Zach Edey for a couple years now, and I'm sure he had bigger aspirations coming out of high school, but you can go play somewhere else and not play on the biggest stages and not be number one in the country. And maybe for some players, that's what they'd prefer. There's nothing wrong with that. But for TKR, he said, no, I'm going to buy into what this program is trying to do. And that's just a testament, again, to, the players and, Matt Painter for, creating this culture. So I give them a lot of credit.
I think this point from Matt Spurgeon, he says Edey TKR is almost nice just to give a different look to opposing defenses. It's strong offensively, especially compared to Edey first. I like first at the 4 for defense against most teams. And I think that's the goal with this is like TKR, Gillis, and First are all very different players at the 4. And so there are going to be games that it's not a TKR Edey game, right? Like whether it be they have a really quick 4, whatever the case may be, right? So then you can bring in First for defense. Or if you need shooting, you can bring in Gillis, who's I believe still shooting 50% on the year from 3. Like, and that's where I think the people that and I don't want to say the people that were calling for like TKR to be benched or whatever, because I think we all are like, hey, this isn't quite working. That we're starting to see a little bit of why Painter's stuck with it. It's if this does work, they now have 3 legitimate players that they can play at the 4 for any given like scenario. If a game where Edey's getting double, triple teamed, TKR can somewhat be that kind of go-to guy down low then, or finish at the rim. And so is it perfect? No. Is there still work to do? Absolutely. But it's getting there, getting a little bit better.
Yep. Kraig Bowers here giving us some updates from the press conferences. Said they were intentionally trying to go to other guys. It was just a matter of them high hedging Braden and doubling Zach. So other guys were open. I think referring. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just want to talk about that real quick because the high hedge is what I think. I think it's the final step for Braden. I think, and it's a tough thing to get past. And by high hedge, it's when Purdue's setting a pick and roll, right? It's when the guy that's defending the screen setter, generally Edey, he comes up and goes like way above Edey and basically just tries to push Braden back. And so what that does is it takes away Braden's ability to like just turn the corner and get downhill or get to his pull up or just see the floor in general. And that's like the Northwestern game. Like Braden was hedged a ton. I think these games where you see him really struggle, like that's the scenario. I know he ends up with 6 assists. He wasn't really hunting his shots tonight. But I think, what am I trying to say? That was something I noticed too. It's like it was other guys because of how Jacksonville was playing their defense. Like they were intentionally taking Braden out of pick and roll actions, and they were throwing like 14 bodies at Edey at all times.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing that Kraig, because I don't think Craig's going to be able to check in with us tonight, he says he'll his note for the game is 8 of Purdue's 14 steals came from guys that didn't play last year. That's interesting. Lance Jones
3
picked
from
up.
Jones, Colvin has 2, so that's 5, and then 3 from Heidi. That's 8. Yeah.
Yep. So, and those are the type of players, especially Lance Jones, it's just goes to show you the different element they have to this team. But that's something you want to get in the passing lanes. I know one of them was a pickpocket and a dunk on the other end on the fast break for Lance Jones. Loving what he's been doing here this year. We can talk about all the different players, starters. I mean, Braden Smith only had 2 points on 1 of 2 shooting, vastly different from his game against Arizona. He had 6 assists on 23 minutes of action. But it is kind of funny, only 2 points and only got up 2 shots. But I guess the one guy that we could talk about a little bit, I mean, it wasn't anything like insanely outstanding, but Will Berg got 8 points on 4 of 4, dunks at the end, pretty easy dunks. But at the end of the day, just watching the way he was moving, not even just talking about the scoring, but just watching how he was operating in the offense. I thought the one thing that stood out, because you're like trying to understand what his ceiling and potential is as a role player on this team. I don't think he's the next Dirk Nowitzki. I understand he had a big shot. His highlight reel coming out of high school is that he had a shot as a big man, but he did seem like a guy that's going to continue to be that type of effect on defense where he alters shots. You saw guys try to drive at Wilberg, and he was altering the shots enough that he was forcing misses. So while there's going to be more of a developmental curve on the offensive end, I think at the very least, he'll definitely be able to be a serviceable role player on the defensive end.
Yeah. Berg just, like, I know Berg's minutes generally come against the backups and all that in its late game and whatever. He's every single time he's been in, it's felt like I've walked away being like, man, Berg just kind of makes good plays. Like, he's just kind of attracted to the ball on offense. Like, it just ends up in his hands because he's in good spots. I think he has he's not like a defender that's going to be at the level in pick and roll, but he has some mobility where he can kind of, like you said, be this kind of rim protector type. I don't think next year he's going to average 15 and 10 or anything, but I think there's legitimate upside next year. And I'm curious to see what, obviously that's a long ways from now, but I'm curious to see what he kind of ends up as, because he just makes good plays. He really does.
Well, and as Christopher Tice says here in the chat, learning from Coach Brantley, he's got a bright future. And that's a great point. I mean, just the way they develop bigs here, they do it the right way, teach these guys the right fundamentals, and they fit well in this system, as we all know here with Matt Painter. Richard Scott King is asking, how many dunks did we get tonight?
13, which feels like the most in a while. I'm sure if it is, Chris Foreman will probably put something out about it.
Yes. Chris was putting out some interesting stats here yesterday. I'm going to have to look up because it was something that definitely piqued my interest. But I'm not sure what IU's up to right now. I know they're playing Alabama State. Is there any other guy that they're up 11, because I'm always interested to see if they're going to screw up, because they're always playing down to their competition. I should stop trying to jinx it. But Miles Colvin, another guy that I thought stood out, knocked down, a couple threes, had that dunk, where he was obviously pretty fired up to get that one to go down. Again, another guy that I think we all have high expectations for Miles Colvin, and he's got a nice stroke to his shot, nice form, nice rhythm to his shot and his arc. He's got a ton of athleticism. Watching him try to develop, I think it just goes to show you, like, with somebody like that, he's uber talented and he's got a high ceiling, but, watching his highlight reel in high school and, watching the way how fast Jaden Ivey took off, and trying to play the compare game. I even think, we have to be careful with Kanan Catchings when he comes here next year, even with all the insane hype he has coming in. It just goes to show you that, trying to assimilate to the college level and the speed and understanding what you're supposed to do, that stuff takes time. But at the end of the day, he's got a good foundational start here before we get into the thick of Big Ten play.
Yeah, no, I think sorry, the last like 10 seconds I was distracted because they were all screaming for Edie as he is still out there signing
Love
everything.
it.
But yeah, like Colvin's, yeah, there is so much upside to his game. And I know like people are probably still going to question like why doesn't he get a little bit more? I think it's just a matter of trust at this point. Like he's just got to do it more, and Painter will play him. Like the Bama game, Alabama game was Miles Colvin's best game by far. I don't even remember what he shot from three. I don't care about that. That was his best defense of the year, and that's the big thing. He has it in him, I think, to play good defense. It takes time to get used to the system, and I thought today was solid. I don't think it was like spectacular defensively, but I don't think it was bad. I think he's starting to improve there. It's almost a luxury that he's the 10th guy on the team, and you can kind of slowly develop him if needed. And there's going to be 2 or 3 Big Ten games where he's probably a pretty important factor.
Oh, 100%. 100%. That's going to happen at some point. It's just a matter of time. I mean, either an injury, God forbid, or foul trouble in a game. Those are just different elements that just come with the territory, especially in Big Ten play. Just trying to go down the list, sift through some different things. Yeah, Trey Kaufman.
Can we talk about Edie for a sec?
Sure, you can talk about. We never talk about Edie on these post-game shows, so we'll give him some love, I guess. I mean,
he is like just tall, right, or something like that. That's what I'm told all the time. But I think today was just kind of another example of like.
Is Zach still out there signing autographs?
He is.
Okay.
There's still, I don't know, 150 people.
Okay, I'm trying to pressure Kraig to go hunt Zach down and ask him if he'll come on the show. He came on our show last year. He's a good dude. We understand he's a busy man. I really wanted to come to tonight's game for this specific reason, but of course I'm constantly working. So I can never do the things that I want to do. God, yeah, I know. Boo-hoo me, living the dream over here. But so now I'm trying to see if Kraig has the confidence to walk up to the National Player of the Year and see if we can get a double down interview. Try to see if we can effort something early, because this is like, to me, the last appropriate time.
There's one more game.
Well, there's right, but then Big Ten is like 4 days later, because they play next Friday and then Maryland's on Tuesday. Craig's already gone, so it's okay. Forget it. I'm gonna make you do it once we get done with this show. If not, I'll ask him on Friday. So anyway, getting off my tangent here, but you got a little behind the scenes production because I was texting Kraig and harassing him. We're good.
All I wanted to say with Edie is just, this is another example of he just wears teams down. First half, 6 points on 3 shots, 7 rebounds. Obviously, he's going to do his thing on the glass. And then in the second half, 12 points in 9 minutes, 6 for 6 from the free throw line, 3 of 5 from the from the floor. I think Purdue was focused a little more on getting him the ball to start the second half too, but like, it's just another thing where, there's just games last year where if Edie was kind of taken out for the first half, I think it was harder for them to get him going in the second half. I don't think that's been an issue at all this year. Even in the first half, if he has 2 or 3 shot attempts, like he just kind of, he ends up with 8 free throws, 8 shot attempts and 8 free throws. I mean, he just wears teams down, and you have to be perfect for 40 minutes if you want to hold him. Because as soon as your double and triple teams, as soon as they're 1 second late on rotating, it's an ED bucket. Or as soon as your defensive rotations against pick and roll is a half step late, Smith's going to find Edie for a lob. It's just so impressive, I think, of how much he wears teams down. And I don't know if that aspect gets talked about maybe as much as it should. Like you have to be perfect for 40 minutes if you want to hold Zach Edey.
Right, 100%. It's a tall order. So, it'll be interesting to see how things, transpire here. We got Maryland and Illinois to start Big Ten play. We got one more game next Friday. How many in a row has Purdue now won? Is it 34 in a row? Is that what we're sitting at?
I think that's what it is.
34 in a row.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah,
because that was the stat that I was trying to pull up from Chris Foreman.
Gotcha. I believe it's 34 in a
Yeah,
row.
so this was the other because I know they're starting to reach into, they have the longest streak in the country. I'm not sure what the longest ever is for non-conference wins, but Chris Foreman put out a couple days ago, and they can't extend this streak, but He put Purdue has won 18 straight non-conference regular season games against power conferences or nationally ranked teams, the fourth longest streak in NCAA history. So again, against 18 straight against power conferences or nationally ranked teams. And these are the four teams: Duke with 26 in a row, UCLA twice with 21 in a row and 19 in a row, and that's in the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar days, and then 18 in a row for this present team with the Purdue Boilermakers. And you're talking about the Duke team from 91 to 94 that had Grant Hill and was one of the greatest, college teams ever. So this is what I keep trying to tell people, like, and I saw somebody else in the chat, like, I don't even need to talk about March anymore. This team's great. I'm excited for the year. I know they're going to do big things. And this is the thing I keep telling fans too, or people that are doubters that I'm friends with of other Big Ten schools. Like they've just continued to put themselves in a category that is with teams that have been there and done that. And you continue to just keep putting yourself in those categories. To me, it's a law of averages that what they have earned will eventually work out on the back end of obviously all the hopes and dreams. Now, a lot of those teams maybe haven't faced the pressure that this Purdue team will face to get over that hump. This team is, I think, just with everything that's transpired, especially the last few years, it's a different level of pressure they'll have to overcome, but I'm excited to see how they take it. And when you watched how they played against Arizona, to go back to that game, like I'll be eternally impressed with that performance and proof to how these guys are going to fare when the going gets tough here as we get into Big Ten play and as we get into the later part of the schedule in the year. So, those are just some of my thoughts. I'm always thinking big picture. A lot of people are talking about Ethan Morton. Corey Lesney here in the chat says, if Ethan wanted to score 15 a game, there's no doubt he would do it if there was a need. Going to be interesting seeing him play somewhere next year in a scoring position. Good for him. So Corey's got Ethan Morton transferring, but a lot of people have been talking about Ethan in the chat. Do you have anything to touch on him?
Yeah, I'll do. I love Ethan. He could not average 15 a game on this team if he wanted. I don't think scoring is also the thing with him. Like I've said it. He quarterbacks the defense when he's on the floor, and he can be this kind of. He's really good as this secondary ball handler and facilitator. Right, put him in a spot where he can kind of just keep the momentum going, keep the ball moving. He's really, really, really good at that stuff. I think that we kind of like. I don't know if we've ever talked about it, but like Morton does need a shout out. Like last year, he played 25 minutes a game. And this year as a senior, he's kind of taking the back seat, knowing that there is a ton of talent at the guard and wing spot, plays his 10 to 15 minutes a game. And I've never seen, it's never seemed like he complained or anything like that. It's something that maybe isn't talked about a lot, but it is. That's just kind of who this team is, right? I think they're just all in for the bigger picture. They all want to win. And if that's sacrificing minutes and stats for others, then they're willing to do that.
Yep. And Corey's doubling down saying, Ethan said a few weeks ago he wants to keep playing basketball next year closer to home. And it could end up being a numbers game when you've got the 6 recruits they have coming in as well.
Matt Spurgeon says, does anyone know how we can sign 6 players next year? I'm still so confused by this. Do we think someone's transferring? Corey said Gillis and Morton will transfer as grad players, but I think everybody already was under that assumption that at least they wouldn't be back at Purdue. And so, yes, right now you look at the scholarship, obviously assuming Edie, Gillis, Morton are gone, they are one over. Somebody's either going to transfer and Painter kind of knows it, or if that doesn't work, then one of these incoming freshmen will probably do a prep year is what will happen. They'll make it work. I know there's also the potential loophole of NIL money could just somebody doesn't get a scholarship, but they get a ton of NIL money. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I trust Painter to know that 14 players is more than 13 scholarships. And he probably knew that already. And he'll figure it out. I don't think he's too worried about that at this moment in time.
What was the RPI ranking for this team we played today?
The net ranking? Because I don't think.
Yeah, net. I'm sorry, not RPI. Net ranking. Yeah, I sound like an old man saying RPI.
If you can ramble for a second, I could tell you.
Well, of course I can ramble. Somebody asked, they're like, somebody asked in the chat, I thought you finished bricklaying. I have finished bricklaying. work for CHGO Sports. You see here on my chest, produce for, the whole network and do a lot of different things with Cubs, Bulls, White Sox, Blackhawks, all that stuff. And then I'm on the CHGO Bears show. So, I'm working hard with CHGO Sports. I'm always in Chicago doing a million different things, and they keep me busy. And I haven't asked for too much time off when it comes to covering Purdue just yet, because I know those asks are going to be coming here as we get into the thick of the season. So I didn't want to burn up my equity early on with some of these games and Xavier and stuff, all due respect. So I kind of have to pick and choose my spots, but I appreciate everyone that's like saying things in the chat, like, hey, happy to see Braggs again. I trust me, I want to be a part of every one of these shows. I'm really, I've been watching every game along with you guys. I watch all these post-game shows with you guys. But Joe and Kraig have done a fantastic job covering this team this year and picking up the slack where I've left off. So again, shout out to you guys. The net
got
JB
you. 273.
JB and Joe got us. So I got a jet as per usual. Joe, if there's anything you want to end with these guys, you can. If not, we can just call it a night. You want me to take off? You got anything else to talk about? That's up to you, man. It's totally your call.
We've talked about what else is there actually to talk about? It'd just be I think we can call this one, right?
Well, I'm gonna go and you close it out, because if I close it out, we'll be here another 10 minutes.
Okay. If anybody has questions really quick and you want to throw them in the chat, I'll stay for like a minute or two. We'll see what's up. And if not, then I'll just kind of jet out of here. But this is a game today. Obviously, Purdue does their thing. I probably should just get out of here, but I feel like talking Purdue basketball a little bit more. We didn't talk about Jones entirely. I think he was really, really good, not only with the steals, but attacking the rim, getting downhill, getting out in transition. I know we've said it all year and it, whatever, I'm repeating it, but there's just different elements to this team. And it's good to see, Purdue has legitimately 10 guys that can play on any given night. And I think that's a good thing, and they're just better built for success, I think. I'm just excited to see where this team goes, because obviously they're so good, and I still don't think they've played their best basketball, even against Arizona. There's stretches where it's just man, even tonight against Jacksonville, there's a little stretch of what's going on, and I know that's more of just hey, this is Jacksonville, we're not really worried, but good to see Purdue hang 100 on them. This is the first time they got to 100, which is huge. Not huge, but still cool to see that they were able to get it. They got 98 against Samford and 99 against Texas Southern. But yeah, it was good to see all around. Zach Edey is still signing stuff, which is crazy. It is almost an hour since the end of this game. We've been live for 45 minutes, and I know I took 10 minutes before to just do stuff I had to do before this. This is a good game. 8 days off for Purdue. Next game is December 29th against Eastern Kentucky. That's a team that's not, obviously it's a mid-major and Purdue should win, but they are not. They haven't had the best season, actually. They were ranked higher than the last time I've checked on them. Another game Purdue should take care of, and then you get into Big Ten play. That first Maryland game, it's at Maryland. Obviously Maryland has not been good this year, but at the same time, they're going to run their zone. They're going to run their press. It's at Maryland. Don't shoot well. It's a game that you absolutely cannot overlook. And then that Friday, January 5th, against Illinois, in my opinion, that's the two best teams in the Big Ten at Mackey. It is a break game, but I fully expect this crowd to be just going crazy. And it's going to be fun. For as bad as the Big Ten is, there's going to be a lot of, I think, still good games, because pretty much everybody's in the same level aside from Purdue. Then you have your kind of tier maybe of Illinois, Wisconsin, Ohio State. We appreciate everybody tuning in. 45-minute show after a game that Purdue wins by 43. Still have a bunch of you in here, which we do appreciate. If anybody is in here and you guys enjoy supporting us, there's just hitting the like button, whether on YouTube or if it's on Facebook. I don't think there's a way to do it on Twitter. Just retweet our stuff, I guess, would helps. But hit like, subscribe on YouTube, really helps us. We are on Apple, Google, and Spotify podcasts if you prefer audio only. We just interviewed a couple people from the Purdue creative team. That is on audio. I know there's a lot of travel coming up with the holidays. It's a good, I thought it was a really, really good interview for about an hour with Andrew Bay and Vudo. Chris he goes by @Vudo on Twitter. Just kind of getting an insight to what the creative team is and what they do. We all know that they're one of the best in the entire country. So, put that on for an hour while you travel or whatever for the holidays. I do hope everybody enjoys their holidays, safe travels, and all of that. We will be back here next Friday, Jacksonville. Potentially an interview in between. If you stayed this long, you get that little tidbit, but not confirmed. Potentially that for sure Friday, and then it's into Big Ten play. Once again, we appreciate everybody tuning in, and we will catch you all in the next one.